fast and won't necessarily be turning our Bibles. But what we're doing today is we are reviewing the last 2 quarters. This is the last class of this quarter and the last class of this book that we've been studying, Till There Was No Remedy, for the past 6 months. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a review, about maybe 10 minutes of a review, if that. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time looking at 10 practical lessons that we can take from these 2 periods of the Bible that we've been studying for the past 6 months. All right, so we'll start off with some real basic stuff here. First of all, what were the 2 periods that we've studied for the last 6 months? Divided kingdom and Judah alone, right there before the captivity and return from captivity and years of silence, which those 3 periods that come next is what we're going to study in the next 2 quarters. All right? So what were the 2 kingdoms once the kingdom split? All right, Judah and Israel. Which one was in the north? Israel, and Judah was in the south. And now, which kingdom took Israel captive? Assyria, that's right. And which kingdom took Judah captive? Babylon. So that's real easy. A and then B, Assyria, Babylon, Israel, Judah, taken by those 2 kingdoms. And what year was Samaria destroyed by Assyria? Y'all remember that? It's a 7 number. It's in the 700s BC. It was 721. Okay, some people say 722. 721 is when the northern kingdom was taken by Assyria, or destroyed and taken. And what about, when was Jerusalem finally destroyed by Babylon? Remember that year? It's in the 500s BC. 586 BC. So those are 2 numbers that you've probably heard a whole lot of times. And so those are good numbers, kind of benchmark numbers to remember. 721 BC, 586 BC. Destruction of northern kingdom, destruction of Jerusalem. So let's look now at our list of kings and how many good kings were in the northern kingdom of Israel. 0, zip, zilch, right? And so any good kings were in Judah, and I'm wanting to make a lot of this really simple for, some of us may not be as familiar with these concepts. And so one way to remember that if there were any good kings, they were always down south. You probably heard me give the illustration. If there's any good sweet tea in America, it's not up north. They don't know what sweet tea is up there. Any good sweet tea is down south. And so with the kingdom here, the kingdom of Israel and Judah, any good king was down south. And I don't think I've ever told you the number of good kings that were down south, but does anybody know how many? There were 7. There were 7, okay? And now, you notice over on Israel's side all the turnover of the dynasty, and that happened a total of 8 times. You look over on the left side at Judah, no turnover of dynasties, but over in Israel you see that happen 8 different times. And what is significant about the fact that never happened in Judah, that the dynasty never changed? The lineage. The promise to David in 2 Samuel 7, right? That he would always have a descendant to sit on the throne. And of course, this was the lineage of whom? Of Jesus. And if this lineage was cut off, well, then God's plan couldn't be fulfilled. But of course, God's plan can't be stopped. And so that lineage continued right on through. Even with most of these kings were wicked in Judah. So you had the fall of Samaria again that year, 721 BC. So the southern kingdom of Judah lasted 135 years longer because they had some good kings and they had more righteousness than the northern kingdom. So 135 years from 721 BC gets us to 586 BC when that kingdom was finally destroyed by Babylon. Okay? So those are some basic things we all need to be very comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with that information, please go back and watch this class and listen to this part over and over until you've got that. Because that's just basic stuff that we really, really need to have in our minds. And that'll come up over and over in our study of many passages. All right, let's talk now about the scriptures that we covered the past 6 months. So we covered 2 different narratives of history and a whole bunch of prophets. 11 prophets, and then Lamentations. So what were the 2 narratives? What was the first narrative? That we studied. The portion of Scripture, you don't have to be super specific, but that covered the history of what was going on in the divided kingdom of Judah alone. What basic books was that in? All right, Kings, right? The Kings account. All right, so it was 1 Kings 12 through 2 Kings 25. You don't have to remember that. And then what was narrative B? The Chronicles account. And which kingdom did the King's narrative focus on? Israel or Judah? It focused more on Israel. And so Chronicles focused more on Judah. So that's easy to remember. Israel, Judah, Kings, Chronicles. So that's easy. At this point, we're finished with the King's narrative and with the Chronicles narrative. Y'all may be rejoicing at that. Yay, ready to move on and get out of those books. So chapter 25 of 2 Kings, that's the last chapter of 2 Kings. Chapter 36 of 2 Chronicles, that's the last chapter of 2 Chronicles. So when those two books are ended, we have ended Judah alone, okay, and are ready for the captivity. We've covered 11 prophets. Now, I list them here in order as they appear in our Bibles. And this is the first time we've done that. We usually list them in order as they actually did their prophetic work chronologically. The first prophet in our Bible, as our Bible is ordered, is Isaiah. And so what was Isaiah about? What's the message of Isaiah? I save. Trust in me and I will save. What about Jeremiah? What's the message? Jerusalem will be destroyed, right? So submit to the king of Babylon. All right, what about, and by the way, we skip here in the list I have up here, in the order of our Bibles, what comes after Jeremiah? Lamentations, which Jeremiah wrote. We studied about that. And then we also are skipping for now the next two books after Lamentations, which are Ezekiel and Daniel. And by the way, if you don't know your books of the Old Testament, go and Google songs of the books of the Old Testament. And you might feel silly doing it, but you can teach 5-year-olds to memorize the books of the Old Testament and New Testament by song. I'm serious, you can memorize it in like a day. So I want to encourage you to do that. If you have not memorized those, you really need to do that. So after Ezekiel and Daniel, then we have Hosea. And notice all the rest of these are in order as they are in our Bibles. I have them listed there. So Hosea was the message of Hosea. God's heart. God's heart was broken over the adultery of Israel. What about Joel? It was about the locust invasion was no joke, right? No joke. There's a worse invasion coming. All right, what about Amos? Yeah, the people were a mess. The northern kingdom was a mess, so God was going to judge them. What about Obadiah? Obed-Edom. Edom was wicked, so God was going to judge them. What about Jonah? No, not them. Not the Ninevites. Don't save them, God. And God says, well, I'm going to save them because they repented. Ugh. And then we have Micah. What's that one about? My city. Jerusalem had been infected with the ruin, the sin of Samaria, and so they would be judged. What about Nahum? The inn of Nahum reminds us of what city? Nineveh. So that book is about the destruction of Nineveh. Jonah was about the salvation of Nineveh. Habakkuk.
How could you?
Yeah. How could you? Thank you for answering loud and clear, Chloe. I could hear you. So Habakkuk. How could you, God? How could you use a more wicked nation to destroy Judah? And Zephaniah. Zero spared from God's judgment. And, I really like Zephaniah Phia. It's silly, but it's the hottest book in the Bible. Brian and I talked about that and joked, and we said, we'll never tell them that. That's ridiculous. Well, I just told you, and I've told you a bunch of times. So, and Brian told you too. So it's a good, we have two memory devices with that one. So, for me personally, I have never known the prophets as well as I know them right now. I've never learned the message of all the prophets and felt confident that I could tell you, and we haven't studied all of them yet, but hopefully at this point you feel better about your knowledge of the prophets as well. They're not so intimidating, and the message is actually pretty simple, right? So that's our review of the past 6 months because we've done so much reviewing. I didn't want to do it the whole class. So what I want to do is make the rest of today very practical, and we're going to look at 10 lessons we can learn from the divided kingdom and Judah alone. And I'm going to do this in a tongue-in-cheek kind of a way and kind of use a little bit of reverse psychology here. We're going to talk about 10 surefire ways to make God run out of patience with you. Because I thought about it, as we study all that stuff we've been studying, it's really like a manual of, hey, if you want God to finally lose patience with you and destroy you and punish you, hey, just do what these people did. Just follow what they did, and God will finally lose patience with you. And I really got that concept from the main text that the book is even named after, Till There Was No Remedy, which is in 2 Chronicles 36, verses 15 and 16. The Lord, the God of their fathers, sent word to them again and again by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they continually mocked the messengers of God, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, until there was no remedy. That is, God didn't want to do this. He doesn't want to destroy. He doesn't want to send anybody to hell. But in this passage, he didn't want to send his people into captivity. He didn't want to judge them and destroy them. But he was left with no recourse, because after everything he tried, they just kept, in their free will, they kept right on their stubborn path of rebellion. So, again, if we want God to lose patience with us, they show us exactly how to do that. So the first way is worship idols. Worship idols, even if you continue to worship God. Idol worship was obviously a huge problem in the divided kingdom and in Judah, both Israel and Judah. And even when, like down in Judah, when they did worship God, they still had their idols. They would even bring their idols into the temple, into the court. Their altars set up in the court in the days of Manasseh and things like that. So, hey, we're still worshiping God. We just have our idols in addition. Well, we have to watch out for that attitude, don't we? Now, we don't necessarily have little idols that we bow down to, although there are pagan people who do that, and even in America, of course. But we all have to watch out for idols of a different sort, anything that takes the place of God. So I want to get a little input from y'all. What are a few ways that, people today worship idols in our very culture? Prosperity. All right, prosperity, money, celebrities. What did you say, Miss Anna? Again? Television.
Especially when we're young,
Cars. Now, that's not to say that money and television and cars and all the things you said are wrong in and of themselves, but when do they become idols?
That's all you can focus on.
When they take the attention and focus that God should have, and we give that to them. Miss Angie?
And it's just anything that takes you away from God.
Anything.
Anything.
It could be something good. Yeah, and we had a good discussion about this back when we were talking about, I think it was Ahaz, and we talked a little bit about idols, and stuff then. So the last verse of 1 John says, little children, guard yourselves from idols. And I made a decision that for the rest of today, we're just going to use the New Testament. Because we've been in these Old Testament books so much, I wanted you to see that these principles are all repeated in the New Testament, that we all need to watch out for these things. So that's in the New Testament. Guard yourselves from idols. All right, let's move to the second. The second way to make God lose his patience with you, and that is place your trust in anything except God. That's what the Israelites did. What kind of things did they place their trust in when they were under the threat of a certain nation? Another country. Yeah, let's trust in Syria. Let's trust in, especially, what nation did they really lean on a lot? Egypt. Isaiah 30 and passages like that. Yeah, well, we've got our plans. We'll flee to Egypt and everything like that. Well, that did not work at all. And so we have to watch out for that in our culture. Where we're so secure here in America, in our minds and everything. What are some things that people place their trust in except for God here in our culture today? America itself.
Chosen country.
Yeah, we are America, right? God bless America, so obviously we're okay.
Military?
The military.
Chariots.
Debbie? All right? Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. We can trust too much in our families. Our wealth. Yeah. Yeah. I've got many barns laid up with all my treasures, right? I'll be fine.
I think even things like science, so many people are looking at, freezing themselves to keep themselves around for forever until there's cures for things. And we trust in science and medicine and just think we're going to be here forever, or people want to be, and their home is not elsewhere.
And that takes us back to the discussion on idolatry. We're basically bowing down to science, and we forget that science doesn't really say anything, but scientists say things, and we view their word as that is the absolute truth, and we end up placing our trust in what they say, and then in a few years, it's come to find out a lot of things they said, that wasn't true actually. Of course, ultimately we need to view everything, even science, through the lens of the Bible. Don't view the Bible through the lens of science. That'll make you try to reinterpret everything to make it match up with what we think is true. I'm sorry. Absolutely. Trust in ourselves. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that one, because I'm going to go right there in a second. Joe, and then I'll move on.
Your spouse.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, absolutely. We can trust in any people, like our spouse.
In your health.
Yeah. Hey, I'm healthy. I eat healthy. I'm going to live forever. Yeah, absolutely. We got to watch out for that. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 1, indeed, we had the sentence of death within ourselves so that we would not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. And so we don't need to trust in ourselves or in anything, anyone, except for God. All right, moving forward. May need to move a little quicker. Third way to make God lose patience with us is to live for money and pleasure. They do that during the divided kingdom. Remember the time when Jeroboam II was king and God blessed the northern kingdom even though it was wicked? And Amos said things like, you people, you're just laying around on your beds of ivory. You're just sitting around every day just playing, writing music. The wives are just sitting around saying to their husbands, get me something to drink. That had kind of become what life was about, to just sit around and say to people, get me something to drink. It was all about money. It was all about pleasure. This is America. A lot of wealth, even though we don't necessarily realize that we're all wealthy compared to much of the world. And what are some ways, just real quick, I'll just take 3 real quick things from y'all, that this attitude, living for money and pleasure, that this approach can kind of manifest itself. What are 3 ways that it manifests itself in our culture today? Randy, and then Mona.
Before you said manifest, Jack, I was just thinking, when we're living in pleasure, it's pretty difficult to think about the sacrifice Jesus made for us.
Okay. All right. That is very true. Ms. Ramona, what were you going to say?
Total corruption.
Total corruption. Yeah. Paul said in 1 Timothy 6 that the love of money is a root of all evil. Or as the New American Standard says, all sorts of evil. But it corrupts people's minds and motivations, and people end up doing all sorts of things that are not ethical, that are not right, all for money. Yeah, absolutely.
To bring it home to us, I think sometimes for us, it's maybe we can look at the but if we get too anxious about our money, we need to be wise. But
Okay.
if we put too much fear and anxiety and not trust that God will provide, that our family will provide, then that distracts us. We may not be living on captive ivory.
Yeah. But the anxiety itself, we have to not let that take us over. And that, that's a tricky one, because I don't want people to think that I'm saying if you're ever anxious, then you're sinning or something like that. But we do have to kind of be careful about that. And also, I think of things like debt and going into irresponsible debt. Not that all debt is necessarily wrong, but a lot of it is very, very irresponsible and puts us into kind of a slavery position. The borrower is slave to the lender, and so on. We can talk about so much here. On the pleasure side, there's YOLO, you only live once, and that's kind of the mantra of our society. Live for now. In Luke 8, Jesus, when he was explaining the parable of the sower, He said, the seed which fell among the thorns, these are the ones who have heard, and as they go on their way, they are choked with the worries and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring no fruit to maturity. So we just have to beware. All right, the fourth way that we can make God lose patience with us is take advantage of the poor and needy. Yeah, that's a great way to make God angry at you. That's what was going on in the divided kingdom in Judah alone. Again, going to Amos. Remember, Amos said they pant after the dust on the head of the helpless. They sell the needy for, you remember what he said they sell them for? A pair of sandals. And so they're using these people that are kind of helpless for their own benefits. Now, it was tough for me to think of, specific ways that this is done in our culture. So, there are some things we could maybe say on that. But what I want us to kind of think about is, in our own lives, though we may not take advantage of the poor and needy, and maybe we do and don't realize it, but what I wanted to focus on is, do we help the poor and needy? Do we do the opposite of this, what we need to be doing? In James chapter 1, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their trouble and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. What does it mean to visit orphans and widows in this context? Help. Doesn't mean just go and sit with them, although that's good. That can be helpful in and of itself, but the kind of people we need to be focused on helping are the helpless, those who cannot help themselves. Let's be sure, brethren, that we don't forget that. That message is driven home over and over and over again in the time of the divided kingdom and Judah alone. If we don't get that message and we end up being people who don't help the helpless, we are forgetting one of the purposes God has for our lives. And we're practicing defiled religion in that case. Well, let's go to the next one. This one's hard for me to just say what I have on that screen. Looking at this in a reverse psychology way, how can we make God lose patience with us? Well, commit a lot of fornication. Make God lose patience with you. That's what the Israelites did, even in their worship. Which king was it that brought Baal worship in and made it the state religion in Israel? It was Ahab. He married Jezebel, who brought in Baal worship, which involved fornication. There was even one case in the time of Manasseh when they put an Asherah pole in the temple, which suggests they were committing fornication in the temple in worship to Asherah. They committed a lot of fornication in the divided kingdom in Judah alone. And obviously, that's a problem for any culture. And America is no exception. And Christians are often no exception. So let's be very sober to reflect in our hearts and in our lives how seriously this is. Paul said, 1 Thessalonians, he said, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification. That is, that you abstain from sexual immorality." All right, let's go to number 6 now. The 6th way to make God lose patience with you, that is do the bare minimum for God. You think about, when kings like Hezekiah and Josiah would reform the land and rid the land of idols and basically command the people to worship and serve the Lord. Well, I'm sure a lot of them did that genuinely. But a lot of them were doing it just because the king said we have to. It was by the command of the king, right? And they were still doing their worship, their idol worshiping, just in secrecy. They were going through the motions of worshiping God. They were still, offering sacrifices and stuff like that, doing the external measures, but their heart wasn't in it at all. They were just doing the bare minimum they had. What was their attitude about the Sabbath and every, like the new moon festival? What was their attitude about that? When's it going to be over? So I can get back to deceiving people and making a dishonest gain. That was their attitude. They want to do the bare minimum and get it over with. Applications are obvious. So give me 3 manifestations that this attitude can have in the church. Doing the bare minimum for God. Megan? Okay, that's true. Or even just Sunday. Now, I'm not judging anybody that just comes Sunday and doesn't come Wednesday. Please don't think I'm saying that. But if your attitude is, well, I'm just going to do that because that's all I have to do, and I don't have to do anymore, that's the wrong attitude. That's the wrong attitude. All right? That's a great example, Megan. All right? Chloe and then Brian?
I was going to say, or just, staying for the Lord's Supper only and saying,
Okay.
oh, I'm good, I'm saved, I'm continued, I'm out. Like,
yeah. And again, not to say that if you ever just come for the Lord's Supper and you had to leave, that's sinful. But if your attitude is, well, that's all I really have to do, so let me just come and do that, and then I'm just going to leave and go home and watch NASCAR or whatever it is. Well, obviously, that's the wrong attitude. Great example. Brian?
I'm going to make the same point.
About NASCAR?
Having this, whatever worship you attend, be all. That's it. No home study. No
Okay. All right. So we're going to come Sundays and maybe Wednesdays, and we're going to come to the gospel meetings, and we're going to be here for all that stuff. But the Bible is never talked about or opened, and no prayers are ever uttered together as a family at home. Let's just do the bare minimum that we got to do. Angie?
Could it also be too that just maybe having a relationship with people in church and maybe not outside of church? Like the only time I ever see this person is at church, and I never try to contact them outside of church.
Okay. Yeah.
Could that be that too?
I think so. I think so. It's just like, oh, I'll be around these people as long as I have to be. All right, yeah, great thoughts, everybody. A verse first, 1 Corinthians 15:58. Paul said, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable. Now listen to this part. Always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil is not in vain in the Lord. He didn't say just do enough to get by, guys. He said abound in it, always abounding in it. All right, number 7, the seventh way to make God lose patience with you, and that is to eliminate all knowledge of God's Word. Remember what they said to Isaiah? Enough! We're tired of hearing about this Holy One of Israel you keep talking about. Be quiet, finally. That was their attitude. In fact, they lost their book of the law. In the time of Manasseh, it was lost somewhere in the temple. Did the people seem to mind? They didn't want the knowledge of God. They didn't care about that. So many other passages that I don't have time to go into. I mean, obviously, this can be a big problem in our culture. But again, focusing on us, though our attitude is not, well, let's just eliminate the knowledge of God's Word. In what ways can kind of the attitude of, well, Bible knowledge is not all that important, how can that maybe show itself, manifest itself today in our culture? With us.
People picking and choosing what they want from the Bible
Yes.
and forgetting the rest of it.
Yes. I like these passages. I don't like the other ones that say stuff that I don't want to hear and talk about. That's a good one. How about just the desire to know God's Word? God's Word. To know it. Maybe our desire is just, to come to church and just hear things that, make us happy, make us motivated. But tell me stories. Don't get into this. Now, we want to know this. This should be our focus. And that goes right into the next point. Before I get there, let me read this passage. Colossians 2, in verse 2. Paul told the Christians at Colossae to attain to all the riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the knowledge of the mystery of God, both of the Father and of Christ. Now, notice there that he did not say simply, I want you to attain to understanding. He said, I want you to attain to the assurance of understanding. But it was more than that. He said, I want you to attain to the full assurance of understanding. Right? But he said more than that. He said, I want you to attain to the riches of the full assurance of understanding. But he said more than that. He said, I want you to attain to all the riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the knowledge of the mystery of God, both of the Father and of Christ. You think knowledge was important to Paul? We cannot overestimate the value and importance of knowing God's will and God's ways and God's Son. We need to know it. We need to be known as people of the book. Even though Paul is not just talking about book knowledge, right? But how are we today going to know God and His will? We're going to have to know it through the Word that's been revealed to us. So we should be people of the book who want to know God's Word, who dedicate ourselves to study it and to know it. All 66 books, all 1,189 chapters. That's my goal. And I hope that's your goal. Any comments on that? Any other comments on that before we go to the next one? Debbie?
It just makes sense that if we want to know God and we know we're going to be living with Him forever in eternity, we want to know all we can now.
Absolutely.
It's relational. It's
Yeah.
a relationship. It's not just knowledge, but
Right.
it's knowledge so that we know who
And know Him. And that is the emphasis in this passage and in so many others. Yeah, as I said, it's not just book knowledge, but it's studying those things so that we can actually have a knowledge of our God and His Son. Great. All right, number 8. Choose religious leaders who say what you like. That's a great way to make God lose patience with you. This happened a lot in the divided kingdom and in Judah alone. Think about what Jeremiah said. These people just want preachers who say what? Who prophesy, peace, peace. But Jeremiah said there is no peace. In fact, Jeremiah said the captivity is going to last 70 years. And in Jeremiah 28, Hananiah said, it's not going to last 70 years. Remember how long he said? 2. It's going to last 2. Well, they really liked his message. 2 years sounds a lot better than 70. We'll just listen to him. Peace, peace, when there is no peace. There are preachers all over the land that want to preach those kinds of messages. And I will tell you this. I believe that the church has got to watch out more and more for that kind of preaching. This peace, peace kind of preaching that takes an emphasis off the truth of God's Word, off the things that hurt, that we may not want to hear, and redirect it to, kind of almost pop psychology and, stuff that makes us feel good, or just leave, you're really motivated. We just have to be careful of what we're looking for. What we should all be looking for, as I said earlier, is not someone to get up here and say things we like, but to get up here and preach the truth, whether we like it or whether we don't like it, whether it makes us uncomfortable or whether it makes us encouraged. So, what other ways can this attitude manifest itself in today's culture? Choosing religious leaders who say what you like.
Maybe slightly different, but I think of Jonah. It can be even not leaders, but us. There's stuff that we know we need to say, evangelism, that's hard and scary. Jonah didn't want to say it, so it can even apply individually. Like, I don't really want it. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. I don't want to stick out. So it's not going to.
Absolutely. You cannot, and I'll tell you, as a preacher, you cannot have the attitude, I'm going to say what I know the elders will like. I mean, the elders here are going to support the truth. But I'm going to say what I know will keep me in my job. I'm going to say what I know the congregation will be comfortable with, and nobody will get their, feathers ruffled or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean to offend people unnecessarily, but if the truth spoken in love and gentleness, if it offends, I'm going to speak the truth all day long. If speaking the truth, means you get fired from preaching or whatever might happen, I'm going to preach the truth. I'm going to preach the truth. And although you're not a preacher, it's got to be your attitude about God's Word, and stand up for the truth of God's Word, even if it's not popular, right? Debbie?
A lot of people want to be entertained by religion as opposed to
Yes.
you're here to worship God.
That's right. And that's not to say that preaching can't ever use great illustrations, and not to say preachers can't ever say stuff that's funny, but if our attitude is, I want to go hear that preacher because he's such a great this or that, we just have to be careful about our attitude. We get that preacheritis kind of complex going, The emphasis is this, right? The message, not the messenger. Don't ever, 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 ever forget that. That's the emphasis. God's Word. Anna?
I have a friend who's a member of the church, and she left the church years ago. And when I talked to her about it, she's talking about looking for something else. She says that I'm reading the Bible to see what it means for me. And she's picking to, well, she reads this devotion out of another book every day, and she, I think Oprah has her own religion or something, but she's picking and choosing what makes her feel good. Instead of, she knows the truth, which is word, she knows the truth, but she's trying to find something that just identifies with her and makes her feel good about herself.
And that's very common. And we have to be, in a way, we have to be kind of patient to help people who have that attitude, because that's our culture. Like, that's what people are surrounded with, and that's the whole approach to life is, it's got to work with my emotions, and it's got to feel good and feel right. Brian?
Like what Andy Andrews said, he's not a preacher, but he helps companies and goes in and tells them what they need to hear. And he says, I can't stand when people call me a motivational speaker. I'm not a motivational speaker. He says, I tell you the truth whether it motivates you or not.
Amen. I like that.
That's good.
Say the truth whether it motivates you or not. Yeah, that's it.
Adam,
Yes.
whenever you were about item number 4 on this list, I wrote the top to me. Everything you put up there has this meaning. It's a seeking meaning other than God. And that's, could all come together in that umbrella so far. I don't know if you've got the next two, but that's the difference. Where's God in this?
Absolutely. That's the way the Israelites were in the divided kingdom, Judah alone. All right, this passage in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 3, Paul said, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance to their own desires. And they will turn aside from the truth and will turn aside to myths." That's what we see all over the religious landscape today, and I'm afraid that is starting to creep into the church. Let's be sure that it never does. Number 9, ninth way to make God lose patience with us: persecute anyone who tries to correct you. Don't just resist them, persecute them. What people got persecuted in the divided kingdom? Can you think of a couple of people? Like who? Elijah. Remember Jezebel hunting his life down and everything, and he fled? Who else? We just studied some things that happened to Jeremiah, remember? He got lowered down into a cistern to sink in the mire. Jeremiah chapter 20, he got put in stocks in the high gate of Benjamin and basically tortured all night long in the presence of everybody there. So, though we may not actually persecute somebody who corrects us when we don't want to be corrected, we do kind of have to watch out that we don't, in our own subtle way, persecute. Now, I wanted to kind of explore that. What are some subtle ways that we might almost kind of persecute people who might rebuke us in God's Word in a way that we didn't like? Jay?
Being passive aggressive towards them, like during services.
Yeah, so it's like, I like you, but I don't really like you. How about, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just not going to talk to that guy anymore. Or, I'm just going to leave that church and I'm not going to talk to anybody there. That has happened here. We have had people leave and cut us off because they did not like the truth of God's Word being preached. I know that has happened here. And it's hurtful. When someone was my friend and now they won't respond to my texts, they want to have nothing to do with me, is that a form of persecution? Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I'm saying is, we just need to be careful that if someone comes to us and has the heart and the boldness and the love to say, look, brother, you're doing something wrong here, to make sure that our response isn't, well, I'm going to find a way to give you a taste of your own medicine. I'm going to find a way to make life miserable for you. That is not, The attitude of the Christian is not, I'm going to fight fire with fire. That's what I'm going to do. No. Chloe?
I was going to say another way to like persecute somebody if they correct you is to then say to yourself like, oh, I'm going to try to find some way to correct him, or I'm going to try to find some way, and then not only use that correction, but then like point out that correction to everyone else.
Yeah. To justify yourself, make yourself feel better. Yeah, and that's the absolute absence of humility, right? Great thoughts. Last one, the 10th. Oh, wait, I keep forgetting these scriptures I want to mention. Paul said to the Galatians, have I become your enemy by telling you the truth? We need to make sure that we don't ever make somebody our enemy because they told us the truth. In fact, we need to view them as our friend for having the courage to state the truth to us. I'm saying that to all of us. That's a good lesson for me to remember. Number 10, ignore all warnings to change course. That's a surefire way to make God lose patience with you. I think I did a whole sermon on that, or one of my classes was based on that concept. We don't have prophets to warn us. We do have brethren who can use God's Word to warn us, but ultimately any warnings we get today are through God's Word. And there are lots that are there. And we need to make sure and pay heed to those warnings. This passage in Hebrews is so powerful. See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if those did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, talking about Moses in the context, much less will we escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven. Right? In the days of the divided kingdom and Judah alone, all these prophets coming, all these messages, and they would not heed those messages. And look at what God did to them. He said, there's no more remedy. I had to destroy them. If that's what God will do and they didn't listen to his prophets, what about when we don't listen to his Son and we don't listen to God himself and his Word? He will lose patience with us. And if we're lost in the end, it's our fault. It's not God's fault. If we don't make it to heaven, it'll be our fault for making it impossible for God to finally save you, for resisting his every effort to save you, because that's what he desperately wants to do. That is our review. We are now done with the divided kingdom and Judah alone. And we're going to dive in to the captivity and the return from captivity and the years of silence in the next 6 months. This is going to be a rowdy study. There's going to be a lot of material we're going to get to cover. It's going to be great. We're going to learn a lot. Did our books come in yet?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so books are in the back. I'm glad because the slide says they're in the back. So I'm not lying. They are. And get a book if you don't have one already. Please, by Wednesday, read pages 1 through 18. That's a lot of reading. And also study Daniel chapter 1. Don't just read it, but please take the time to really analyze it and study it. And one thing about the next 2 quarters that you're going to love is we're going to go a little slower in the sense that we're not going to cover quite as much scripture in every single class. There will be some where we cover a lot, but a lot where we just study 1 or 2 chapters. So we get to slow down in that sense. Syllabi are also in the back, so make sure and get one of those. And we've got about 50 seconds. Anybody have any last thoughts? I was going to leave me hanging.
I think it's been interesting that you've taken the biblical names and changed it into little quick things we can remember.
Well, Brian kind of got me going on that, and with Obad Edom. So we can thank Brian for that. And that has been immensely helpful to me. And so I'm glad that's been helpful to you, Ms. Carol. Anything else? Y'all got 10 seconds. Last word.
So reading 1 through 18, it won't be 18 pages per class, just to let people know.
Yeah, no, this is unusual. For the first class, it'll be a lot of reading. Okay, thanks everybody.